All right. Hello and welcome to PodRocket. I'm Kate, producer of PodRocket, and with me is Kaylin. Hi, Kaylin. How are you doing?
Hi, doing great.
And Noel. Hi, Noel. How are you doing?
Yo, I'm doing well.
We are going to do a year in review. It looks like it was a big year based on the outline that we have in front of us. So we'll do our best to get enough topics. I don't know if we'll have all the topics, but yeah. Kaylin, you want to take it away?
Sure. Thanks, Kate. I'll try to keep it to under 4 hours if I can. I'm sure I'm not alone in my opinion that like this last year has felt like simultaneously a decade and also like a week. So hopefully this review will be useful to all you devs out there. Last year we did a review and we also put our opinions on the future 2021. And I thought it would be a great place to start if we look at what we wrote last year and see if that actually came true or not at all. Basically, what we wrote, we were impressed by Next.js last year. If you look at the popularity over the last 3 years, I'd say, but definitely within the last two, Next.js and Jamstack, just in general, has just gaining so much popularity that no brainer that it's going to get more popular. And true enough, it did. Another thing we wrote was decentralization of tools versus centralization. And basically what that meant was you have your Babel and webpack and all these tools that you use together. And then you have your Next.js that you just install it and then it works. And yes, that definitely, that trend I see definitely is continuing. However, one point against that maybe in a topic we'll get to in the future, later on rather, is the fact that all these tools are no longer limited to Node anymore. In the past, it seems to be de jure that everyone, used Node and JavaScript to build JavaScript tools. And now with the popularity of ESBuild and Go and Rust tooling, that I don't know, maybe that's a point in the decentralization camp. And we might move towards that again. So, Noel, you know a lot about Jamstacks. You've probably worked on them more than I have. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I found it a little bit curious on on the note of decentralization versus centralization, in that in my experience, it's hard for me to even say which way that trend is totally going, because on one end of the spectrum you get Gatsby, just pull everything off the shelf and it'll kind of work, versus like you said, build your own suite. So I don't have a huge perspective, but I feel like we've been seeing more in Reddit threads and Hacker News posts and stuff, people kind of reaching for those off-the-shelf tools. But I also feel like there's quite a bit of nuance there, even between Next versus Gatsby and stuff like that. So yeah, it's plenty to cover and talk about.
It's more of a meta trend that we talked about a lot last year, because that's when we first started to see in our blog posts as well, what we were writing about there, people being upset with, webpack configs, 3,000 line webpack configs and all of that hell. But I remember a time back in the day when it was the other way around. You just had a script tag and that did everything. Or so history rhymes, especially in the web development realm. As far as new stuff to JavaScript, the language, not much to say on this front. I guess some minor useful things like string replace all or numerical separators, things you've probably used for years with Babel and stuff. That's finally getting in there. But I guess a big thing that the standards organizations are doing is adding private methods and accessors, and that's one of the changes that I think you'll probably see in JavaScript over the next couple of years that might become more widely used. Even TypeScript now supports it, which they just added this year. And as far as other cool things, a feature that was upcoming in the next year that I'm looking forward to, Shadow Realms, which is the coolest name for a feature I've ever heard. And that's basically sandboxing environments, like having your own mini global scope for like security reasons. So cool things. Is there anything you're looking forward to?
I mean, I guess not in particular. I guess I'm kind of, if we can wind back a little bit, I haven't encountered too much of like the private methods and accessors stuff in the wild. What are some examples of those?
Yeah, it was very divisive because they chose the hashtag # as like the way to declare them.
Gotcha.
On a
the
JavaScript class.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was very divisive because people wanted them to use the word private, just like TypeScript. I think the reason why they did that, and the reason why they make a lot of weird decisions that no one likes, is it's just easier for parsers, I guess, if I remember correctly. I don't know. I don't agree with the decision.
Yeah. Maybe slightly faster or something.
Yeah. Like, it's not worth all of the developer confusion, and I don't know. We might see people not actually use the feature because of that, to be honest. Like, I remember the comment section when that was announced. And you can go on the GitHub thread too, where they discuss it, and it's like 1,000 comments long. Everyone's chiming in, saying how much they hate it.
So do you expect like big libraries and stuff will start using them, or are they already? Or where do you see the trend kind of taking hold?
Like, if you're making an SDK and you don't want people to easily like peer into the internals, I mean, they still can because they can just look at your code. But I guess the reason is security, but like I don't actually know how much security it offers. It's more of a soundness or design principle kind of reason.
Yeah, gotcha. Or I'm thinking back to like the conversation we had with Evan Yu of Vue, and he was talking about like libraries that used a lot of the internals of Vue that were not like supposed to be publicly accessible, and that was causing them a lot of strife in the migration.
Yeah, and LogRocket, we're aware of all that when our customers use the internals of the SDK that they're really not supposed to use. That like, don't do that. Please don't do that. So maybe we should be one of the adopters in that. And another thing, JSON modules coming up. The fact that the JavaScript module system is going to basically branch out from JavaScript kind of solidifies something that kind of started with Browserify and Webpack 10 years ago now, where you can import JavaScript and import CSS and all that. And that's finally becoming like a standard thing. Yeah.
Why? Can you explain a little bit like why devs might care about that?
Because, well, treating them like modules means that you can, well, I mean, the idea is that like is standardizing like a way to transform things when you import them. That's like the spec overview essentially. But I just like the fact that we're standardizing things that everyone uses anyway. I think that's kind of risky that we don't do that sometimes. Like, I remember when Babel was popular first, and it was years and years ahead of the standards. And then, like, remember the decorator fiasco, where they switched the decorator proposal, and then what everyone uses and still uses isn't actually the standard. That was never really solved correctly. So I don't want that to happen again with modules.
Yeah, totally.
Besides the standardization, it was a big year for, I'd say it was a big year for Vue and Svelte. Vue 3 was released that was late last year, and I don't know. I really like the new version of Vue. Before Vue 3, I didn't really like the model, but it seems like they're taking some great inspiration from React and the conversation around reactivity that is very, very popular nowadays. Have you ever actually used Vue?
Yeah. I use Vue still actively for like my side projects and stuff pretty heavily. Cool. So I've been delving into like the composition API and stuff quite a bit. And yeah, it is nice. It's interesting to me because I feel a lot of the kind of initial, I don't know, excitement around Vue was how easy it was to use the options API, how quick it was to do like prototyping and stuff. And I feel like even if you're really fluent in the composition API, that may not be quite the case as much. But I don't know if that is necessarily a problem. It seems like Vue still is very much treating the options API as like a first class thing. Like they still want you to use that if you don't need to get in the weeds. But if you anticipate your app getting big, having lots of traction, you can kind of do the transition piecemeal. You can have some components of each type. The same story with React and hooks. But it's been interesting kind of seeing, the difference in the way that the communities have talked about the two. Like it seems like the Vue community is a little less, always use the composition API, banging on that drum a little bit less.
Dogmatic.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I like it a lot. It feels like I can just kind of, when I get to those points, those fiddly components that have a lot of shared logic, and I'm like, oh, this should really be extracted in a clean way. Like, it's there, it works. I find the paradigm even more intuitive than the hooks paradigm a little bit.
I'm eager to see what React comes up with in like response to all of this, because there wasn't any like major React versions this year, but they announced the plan for React 18. And they have a working group, and on GitHub there's tons of discussions, and I see lots of great ideas. And Vue is always brought up, it seems.
Oh, interesting.
Commonly. So good amount of competition in the front end framework space this year, I think.
Yeah. Are people saying like, this is the way Vue does it? Isn't this clean? Yeah. Is that the usual tone?
I see a lot of comparisons. There's also comparisons to Svelte. Angular doesn't really come up anymore. I always find it interesting. I don't know what it is. I'm always surprised by the number of people that use Angular, but I'm also surprised by how few times it comes up. Svelte though is the opposite. It's like talked about way more than it seems than it's actually used. In like surveys, everyone says, "I want to learn Svelte, but I don't use Svelte."
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm definitely kind of guilty of that as well. Like I've done Hello World, right? And then other than that, kind of just like I want to build something. I know Vue or React, and I'm like I can spin this up quickly. I feel like the learning curve maybe scaring me away a little bit, and maybe that's not justified. Like it might not be that hard, but I'm probably contributing to that stat a little bit. Like that, I just approach it the same way.
I think what will likely happen is that React and Vue will steal some of the ideas that Svelte has around like optimizing and pushing that into the compile part, bundle part. So,
gotcha. Yeah, add it to the predictions list, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Reactivity, performance, bundle size, I would say. So, to bullet point it. Moving on though, another area that I've seen a lot of change in the last year, state management. Particularly, Facebook announced Recoil. This was actually the year before, but I've seen it gain some popularity, NPM downloads and stars and stuff. I'm really excited for Recoil. If you haven't tried it, I would definitely recommend at least doing a Hello World. If you've ever like built or worked on an application that heavily uses hooks for state, and you're tired of Redux because of a very long list of reasons, you should try out Recoil. It's like hooks and Redux had a baby, essentially.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I haven't used it or even done Hello World or anything. So yeah, I'm anxious to check it out. I feel like I'm kind of in this camp where I always used like local state and everything until I had something that was needed access from like the top level or a lot of components accessed across the application. Then I would reach for something like Redux or Vuex or whatever my state management was of choice. Does this like kind of address that problem? Like, no, you can always use this for all state, but it gives you a more granular like atom, I guess, or is there another real motivation?
It's like inspired by it. The whole thing is revolving around atoms of state. So like, it's kind of like formalizing conceptually the stuff that you would put into, a use state. But it's like removed from the component, and like you can reuse it. And what I like about it the most is that you can incrementally adopt it, which is something that is often overlooked, especially with state management. Like it seems for most enterprises, people started the app in the days when Redux was the easier solution, and everyone put all their state in Redux. And then hooks got released, and then suddenly everything is all the new stuff doesn't use Redux. Maybe that's just us, but that's chaotic. I don't like that. So
yeah. I don't really have much of a pulse here on what people are doing, but I have to imagine, especially like those big apps that are, have a lot of complex state, they're still reaching for some kind of state store, right? Like there's just no way they're doing it all localized with hooks and passing it up and down. It's just too much. Work.
Facebook was like in their blog post, in the why Recoil posted. I think that was definitely one of the main reasons for it. Yeah. Besides Recoil, over the last 2 years, I've also seen more people use like Apollo or their data fetching library as a source of state, just using the cache in like a more heavy manner.
Yeah, that's interesting. So are people putting state that's not coming from external sources, and they're putting that into like Apollo caches?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Are there like libraries built around this that do this? Like, is there tooling?
I think you just add it to the cache. I'm not too familiar with it, but it's just interesting how like everyone has a different answer now, and like nothing. You switch jobs and like you have to learn a completely new state management system. I miss it. I miss when everyone just used the same thing. But besides that, another thing I'm excited for in the front end Vue and state management area, the fact that with WebAssembly now we have like non-JavaScript competitors. Like you're not limited anymore. The one I like the most in Rust is called Vue. It's quite popular on GitHub. If you know Rust and you're interested, I would definitely check that out. But even like C#, who would have thought with Blazor? I was very impressed by like the conceptual model that Blazor has, even though that it's Microsoft and ASP.NET. I can't help but think about the early 2000s when I hear ASP.NET.
Yeah. Was it replacing something? Didn't Microsoft have something in the stack that kind of was in this space before as well, or is still?
I don't know. I have almost no context about the web part of ASP.NET.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they did, but it wasn't like client side. I guess they were pushing like HTML to the client. This is like running C# in the browser using WebAssembly.
Gotcha. Nice. Yeah.
But it also does server-side rendering, so it's like integrated.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Impressive.
Cool.
It also has a bigger community around it than I thought it would.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Like, are there a lot of people using it? Do we know, is it getting mass adoption, like big sites and stuff?
Yeah, like I found component libraries and like tons of tutorials, and like there's a couple of awesome lists. Yeah. Also for you too, for Rust, there's also a growing community around that. There's also Seed, which is similar to you. If I could make a bold prediction, it would be that this stuff becomes more popular in the next 5 years.
Gotcha. Do you see Rust? I mean, I feel like Rust is a little bit more, there's a little more fervor around it. Do you think that will lead to it kind of being the dominant player in these non-JS front-end framework space?
I don't know. I think Blazor has a lot going for it because people might already have C# servers, like big enterprise companies. So that might be a more natural fit. Rust, though, is like far less market share. But yeah, like you said, it has the popularity. So maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe some of those, like we were saying, I feel like people aren't talking about Angular anymore. Maybe a lot of those old Angular shops will start shopping around.
Yeah. It does seem harder to incrementally adopt, though. So this might be more of a thing that people pick for new front ends or something.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess I'm not totally sure at the abstractions that it is making. Like, do you have to be fully bought in, like using Blazor for all of it, or can you use it with like other? Like, could you use React as well?
I don't think you could actually. I know there's React libraries for C# though, so maybe you could use it alongside. But I don't know how that would work. I imagine it would be very difficult, and you might have to get pretty hacky.
Nice, cool. Something to check out though. Have you messed with any of the Rust frameworks at all? You said you liked Vue. Have you built anything with it?
Yeah, I tried to make. I have a game side product that I've had for going on 15 years now, and one of the many iterations was in Rust, and I refused to abandon the web. I later on switched to C# and Unity, but yeah, I tried Vue to because my side project's very UI heavy for a game, so I thought that web technologies, UI, perfect fit. I really like how Vue handles it. Seed was also good. I also tried Seed a little bit, but I would definitely go with the larger community for something this small, if you can.
Gotcha. You didn't settle on either, though. Was it something that you found particularly wrong with it, or was it unique to your use case?
I just abandoned web technologies. Making a game in the web is not very well. Even with WebAssembly, it's just not there yet. That is one thing I hope I could have more of an update for all the listeners in WebAssembly, but it seems like there hasn't been as much, or maybe I'm just not finding it. I was also very frustrated by Firefox and the support for WebAssembly, like various bugs and stuff. That was frustrating. So
gotcha. Yeah, I think we've got some kind of higher level browser discussion further down on our list, so we can circle back there. Yeah, I feel like I agree though. There was a lot of fervor around WebAssembly, or at least it felt like there was more like a year or 2 years ago, and I feel like it's just it's been quiet. I don't know if it's just there hasn't been movement or.
As far as I can tell, they're still working on specs like garbage collection and lots of things that are basically required for it to be quite popular. But none of it is strictly required, except maybe some of the things that make things faster. Like I think SIMD was one of the proposals I was looking at.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was also very frustrating that Firefox had buggy support for shared array buffers and. Which is also a technology that's basically required if you're using WebAssembly. So
yeah. Maybe I'm underselling it. It's probably one of those that there's a community that's very hyped and into it, and it's gonna change everything. But it's just watching the trends, I feel like people are talking about it a little bit less.
Well, I mean, assembly script that made a lot of waves because it's similar to TypeScript. I think Rust is the most widely used WebAssembly language.
Gotcha. Do you think people reach for Rust just it's a performance thing? Because I feel like Rust is not the easiest to write and build stuff with if you're trying to move fast. Do you think it's mainly performance?
I think it's because you can port things easier to the WebAssembly. You can install libraries that weren't necessarily written for WebAssembly.
I see.
And make them work. Assembly script is when I tried to use it, it was lacking very basic things that I didn't know that I would miss until I tried to use it, and then I realized that it wasn't supported. It's just a more evolved language. You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, gotcha. And able to use existing libraries and stuff a little bit more. Yeah, I feel like is huge. Yeah,
Rust went full throttle with the community with WebAssembly.
Gotcha.
Anyway, moving on. Server frameworks. Don't have much to say except I guess the big mover in the space for at least node-based server frameworks would be Fastify. For the longest time, it looks like Express was never going to be dethroned. There was Koa. There was a couple of things that came close. They kind of fell out of favor. I think Express might be abandoned. Where I'm not really sure. I haven't used it in a long time. I think don't they not use Semver? Or something.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I've blocked it out of my memory. Apologies to all the readers.
No, the extent of my exposure to Express anymore is I'm using Google Cloud Functions and I have an instance of Express I can do things with, but that's kind of I'm never.
So sorry.
Yeah, no, I haven't gone in and been spinning up new like Express services in a long time.
Yeah. So if you're looking for an alternative, I would definitely look at Fastify. Particularly works better with TypeScript. I remember that being a pain point.
Nice.
Strapi, headless CMS, that's also becoming super popular. And as we said before, Jamstacks. Those are the big movers, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, and Gatsby, which you want to talk a little bit about Gatsby? I'm not too familiar.
Yeah. Well, Gatsby's interesting because I'm kind of almost hesitant to put like Next and Gatsby into this like kind of discussion around server frameworks, other than they are doing things on the server. But I feel like they're not really in the same category as like Express and Fastify and stuff. But we were like we were saying, there is a lot of movement. So yeah, I feel like the big thing with kind of Next versus Gatsby, when you were trying to choose one before, was that we had like Next that was doing proper like SSR, so you could render things on the server dynamically at request time and then serve them in a faster manner, so there's less JavaScript happening on the client. And then
that was for the LogRocket website, right?
Yeah. So we did a LogRocket website rewrite. If you haven't checked it out, go check out the new website. It's great. But anyway, so it was like an old handlebars. There was a bunch of stuff going on there. And anyway, yeah, we ported it to Gatsby. It's been going pretty well. But kind of in the dichotomy between the two, Gatsby was always like doing like static static page generation. Where Next was doing like server-side rendering, and in the last year they've kind of come together a little bit more. So like now with Next, you can do like static site generation or static page generation or whatever you want to call it. You can generate all your pages ahead of time and have like static code ready to be loaded that will then rehydrate and get all the reactivity and stuff after it's loaded. But you still get that super crazy fast initial page load, and that's what Gatsby did before. And the opposite's kind of also true. So a lot of the new features in Gatsby in V4, I think, they kind of added proper server-side rendering to Gatsby. We haven't done anything in V4, so I haven't played with this stuff too much. But I feel like they're kind of getting into the same space a little bit more now. So I feel like the distinction now, if you're trying to choose between one, is Gatsby is more opinionated. It's like there's a plugin ecosystem that kind of has a way that it wants you to interact with your data sources, and then kind of build your pages. Whereas Next is kind of roll your own a little bit more. There's a lot of plugins and stuff there as well. But Gatsby is kind of like end-to-end solution. This is how you should be pulling it, especially with the Gatsby Cloud rollout. It's like you can push up to Gatsby Cloud, and we'll give you incremental builds and the new like deferred page generation and all that stuff. Just kind of out of the box, again, like pointed at your data source, your files, or your WordPress site, or whatever it is, and you'll get all the cool Gatsby stuff out of the box. It's kind of always been their MO.
I think the last time I used it was V1. And they had like nothing that you just mentioned.
Yeah, it's really nice. Like, again, working on it for the website rewrite and some new experimentation stuff we're doing with the blog right now. The LogRocket blog has been pretty cool. And it was kind of an odd choice because, like I said, Next is a little more. I don't know if powerful is the right word, but it's more of like kind of roll your own, and that's how it's always been. But yeah, Gatsby's, it's worked pretty well for us. It's one of those things where like you get a lot more, but when something goes wrong with Gatsby, it takes a little more fiddling. You got to like get in and figure out what's going on. Versus with Next, if you're building it yourself, like I know what is happening everywhere, so I can go in and fix bugs. It's kind of which of those approaches do you want to take?
Pick your poison.
Exactly. So yeah, there's a lot going on for sure. I don't know what the trends have been. I looked at them a little bit. I feel like some of the like the package pull numbers may have gone down a little bit for Gatsby, but who knows? Maybe that's just like pipeline changes. And yeah, there's a lot going on with those two in particular.
Cool. Yeah. Also, like continue the trend on like Go and Rust. There's lots of new popular server-side server frameworks and static site generators I've seen in Rust and Go. So maybe in the next year we might see one of those break out and become a good competitor.
Yeah.
Yeah, moving on. Can't not talk about TypeScript. There were 4 big releases this year. Every time I read the whole thing and I'm like, I have no idea what this does, but it looks cool. Like they're going so far into the weeds and like advanced type systems that like, okay, cool, yeah. But I do definitely care about the faster part. LogRocket, we finally adopted TypeScript. We have a huge code base. It took us a long time, but we finally got that working, and I'm excited for faster incremental builds. And like I mentioned, they're doing a really good job of like closely aligning with the JavaScript spec. They adopted the private methods and accessors and all that, despite the fact that they have their own private keyword. The fact that both work together, that's nice.
Nice.
If you look at the popularity, it's like going like straight up, still amazingly. I'm wondering, like, I don't know, it's the de facto standard almost now, it seems, or is that just my?
Yeah, I don't know. I was going to ask. I feel like most of the frameworks and stuff I'm using, or like CLIs that are doing site generation stuff for me, that's usually not the default for a lot of those, which is kind of surprising to me. Kind of on that note, like I agree that it seems like you almost expect it when you get into any kind of front end code base with a lot of active development happening on it currently. And maybe it's just tooling needs to catch up a little bit still.
It's to the point when, like, if I'm using a library and they don't have types, I'm like surprised.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, you get used to the editor like giving you all these nice autocompletes and telling you things, warning you.
We're just spoiled, I think.
Yeah, it's good though. You're spoiled, but you're also safer, right? Like,
yes,
it's a lovely little place to be. But yeah, we've been stumbling across it as well. Again, like back to the Gatsby stuff, we were able to do super cool stuff, kind of end to end on the through the chain there. So it's like we get the results of our GraphQL queries, and those automatically will generate types for us that we can then like pipe through the app, and you get all that neat stuff.
Yeah, that's
great.
always brilliant. Speaking about TypeScript, Deno, which uses TypeScript, similar to Svelte, it's making a lot of waves in the front end or the web development press, but the adoption is like still pretty small. Like in a survey I was looking at, the Stack Overflow 2021 survey, less than 2% have used Deno, despite like all the posts and like the posts on the LogRocket blog and Deno do well and all that. I was surprised to learn they joined TC39.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's. I was reading their technical blogs and how they're running up against the TypeScript parser being slow, and they want to look at alternatives like Rust and stuff. So I'm wondering where that might go, what they're going to be doing and pushing for in TC39.
Yeah, interesting.
I don't know if it's actually going to break out and like become super popular, like everyone thought that it might.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's going to become the next node, but it might be like Svelte, where everyone just adopts some of the ideas.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those. I've looked it up and pulled it up and done some reading like several times, but I've never used it. I'm always like it's never something I reach for. So again, I'm probably guilty of contributing to the stat again. I'm just like, it seems cool in there, but I've never like, I have this acute need. I need something to solve this problem. But
yeah.
Have you been spinning it up for anything?
Briefly to like see how it works. I really don't like the URL importing from a URL idea. I think they're trying to shoehorn in like a browser-like environment. I don't really like that idea. There's lots of kind of oddities that make more sense when you read the docs. Their docs are downright amazing. It must be said. But the community isn't there yet. And like with a node, like, you have Next.js, you have 10 years of libraries. Like to give that up is like asking a lot. So we'll see if they overcome that hurdle. But they have great ideas.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's very, again, it's kind of maybe at odds a little bit with some of the other tooling that we've been discussing and are probably about to discuss a little bit more. But like these kind of moving away from JavaScript but still letting you use that tooling is maybe kind of solving that same problem a little bit that Deno is looking to solve, maybe, or at least we'll fill the need that people have that has led to the creation of Deno. So,
Deno does use Rust, but they still use TypeScript as well, so that seems to be the issue.
It'll be cool to see. I'll keep watching it. Keep reading the blog posts, and maybe someday I'll be like, I should try.
I think they were considering like re-implementing the TypeScript parser in Rust or something. Remember correctly? That sounds daunting.
Yeah.
Good luck. Anyway, segue on to bundlers and other tooling. I think it was this year we talked about Rome from the creator of Babel, which was another good example of like back to centralization of tooling. You want to have one tool that does everything. I don't know if that's going to work. It seems like a lot of work to re-implement.
Yeah.
But like at the same time, Webpack and Babel haven't really made tons of waves this year. I think Webpack 5 was released. That's about it. But like, it seems like all the focus is turned away to like all-in-one solutions like Next.js.
Yeah.
People aren't following Babel and Webpack as much as they used to. And plus there's like Parcel and most importantly, like I mentioned earlier, the non-JavaScript solutions that are breaking out like ESBuild. It's maybe the best prediction would be that these don't become things that everyone uses, but like people use things that also use this, like Vite, which uses ESBuild. ESBuild is written in Go. And the Rust version, I guess you could say, is SWC. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like, like going back to Vite, like having tools, having like the CLIs that default to not using Webpack may be the thing that drives adoption. We'll see, right? Like if I just pull down, like if I make an app and it's an option to use something else as like a bundler or something else to do my build step, and I don't even like think about it. I'm like, oh, that's the default. I'll use it. I'm not worried about that right now. I'm just thinking about the functionality of this web app I want to build. And then people are comfortable writing config for that instead of writing the Webpack config that they're used to. Like maybe that'll be what it does it.
It's not as bad as it used to be. Webpack, I think Webpack 5, it's gotten better. But I think nine times out of 10, you are going to write a Webpack config. No matter what the docs claim, that's what's going to happen. But like you use Parcel seems to do a better job about it. It's a shame that, I don't know, I had lots of trouble with Parcel getting source maps working, I remember. But also they've had a lot of versions since then, so maybe they've improved. But at this point, I'm like wondering why even try to write a bundler in Node.
Right. Yeah.
What's the point?
Like I understand the original, like, we'll use the thing that is the thing that we're working on. Like it seems like that does make sense, but then
performance trumps all
is, well, especially this where it's like, just it's an intensive environment. We have a lot of code that needs to be, kind of re-inspected or figured out or rebuilt. And like, the dev experience, it taking a second instead of 200 milliseconds, like is a big deal. Like it's obnoxious. So
even less.
Yeah.
Right. Like an order of magnitude faster.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Another pain point that I have seen, CSS styling is one of those things that if you don't pay attention to will blow up your bundle size and slow down your development server. Maybe having things an order of magnitude faster might improve things, but also like a couple of years ago, CSS and JS started to become quite popular and making lots of press. And one thing I've seen over the last year, the zero runtime CSS and JS frameworks. A couple of them, Linaria, Vanilla Extract, Stitches. They seem really cool. I guess you could call them like the second generation first being emotion and styled components.
Yeah. Can you explain? I feel like a lot of listeners may not know why that's helpful.
Yeah. So we use styled components for multiple reasons, but basically the zero runtime means that basically there is no runtime cost to having a styled component. Everything is extracted into CSS files in your build step, as opposed to like styled components where it's an actual component. Things are happening in runtime. They use the style sheet API to dynamically generate a style sheet at runtime. But like with styled components, you can use the Babel plugin, and it's I guess there's some pros and cons to the new generation and what the Babel component for the Babel plugin for styled components uses, but it does seem to be faster. So definitely an area I would look out for in the future. I think styled components is kind of showing its age, but I'm glad that people are thinking about it.
Yeah, it's one of those areas too that I am not as familiar with probably as I should be, and that I just kind of go reach for the thing I know when I'm building something. So
I think we went with styled components simply because it was the most popular.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to use styled system and render style props and all that stuff.
Right.
Another thing that everyone's talking about is Tailwind. Utility first CSS frameworks seem to be popular. Everyone complains about how slow it makes their dev build and the gigantic bundle size. I haven't used it, but I listened to all these complaints. So.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat.
Yeah, in the browser space, not much to talk about here, except maybe the number one news item in the browser space in last year, at least important to web developers, the Manifest v3 standard, Chrome's backdoor way of killing uBlock origin and ad blockers. Basically, they want to make a new way to write it's in the name of security, supposedly, for browser extensions, which now with Edge, the fact that we have a unified extension platform for browsers, that's pretty great. But now it also means that basically Chrome writes the rules, and that's not good. So I wonder where that will go in the next year when that is finally released, whether or not the pushback is strong enough. I think among developers, at least Firefox remains very popular, and maybe we might see that become even more popular because of this, despite all my complaints for Firefox.
Yeah. I mean,
this would be enough for me to switch.
Is there, I haven't done much reading on this. Is there, is the current proposal, does it really just totally make, things like ad script blockers, totally ineffective?
No, it's they're removing the way for for extensions to intercept network requests.
Mm.
They're replacing it with something else, but if I remember correctly, basically the lists would have to be updated in an update into the extension and not dynamically. It basically makes it very difficult for uBlock origin to be, or ad blockers in general to be effective.
I see. So you're saying they couldn't pull the list dynamically,
yeah, I forget exactly the reason, but everyone's up in arms about it.
Gotcha.
It's unfortunate. And they're doing it in the name of security, and it's hard to argue with that, but still.
Yeah.
I've also seen the hate for Safari grow a lot over the last year.
Safari is the new IE meme, right? So,
I think the new version was released and people were disappointed. I know with LogRocket, we have tons of a backlog of Safari issues with the renderer. This is not working at all. And it's usually not our fault. Really, trust us. That's unfortunate. It's the new IE. what the Reddit comment section says.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I feel like beyond what we encounter with our stuff, I haven't felt that too much. But again, like I'm not, my ear isn't that close to the ground, so maybe there is a lot that grows. I guess I have noted when I go and look at like, you know, the browser compatibility lists and stuff, Safari is often the red box. I'm like, oh, okay, that's okay, yeah.
I think part of the reason is that every other browser has a rapid release schedule, but Safari is updated with the OS.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still coupled to that. So even if they could improve development, and there's no incentive for Apple to improve development of web stuff, that's not a hot take, I don't think. Even if they could, they wouldn't be able to. I don't know.
Yeah, is that true? Is that true even for mobile, or is this? Are we strictly talking about kind of, you know?
It's the same
desktop.
I think it's the same development cycle.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. It also seems like European Union might be forcing them to enable non-Safari rendering engines in mobile. I was reading, so maybe that breaks their monopoly in mobile, and we can stop worrying about this as much.
Yeah.
Here's hoping.
Yeah, here's hoping.
Yeah. Also, this wouldn't be a 2021 review episode without begrudgingly talking about Web 3.0. Yeah. What can I say?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a lot people could go read, and, you know, there's a lot of opinions and stuff out there.
Should we drop our hot takes?
Yeah. I guess, yeah, give me your feelings on if Web 3.0 even means anything meaningful.
What an abject disaster.
Okay. In what? In terminology or in functionality or everything?
Oh, like, even if they were sincere, and they're definitely not, the proponents, I mean. So you have the theorists, Tim Berners-Lee, a bunch of people who I do respect, saying, oh, we should be, decentralized. I totally agree with that. Tech companies suck. Totally agree with that. But like, and then it's being adopted by tech companies, and it's being adopted by people whose financial interest is like diametrically opposed to the vision. And then you get, then the NFTs, this is even before NFTs blew up. And then NFTs blew up, and then it just poisoned the idea of basically any revolution in the web in the public's perception, I think, which is not good.
Yeah, I think I completely agree that like the biggest issue is now a perception problem in that people are associating, like the drive for federated services and breaking up silos and stuff like as intrinsically tied to this, NFTs and stuff, which is kind of another topic. But yeah, like I feel like I am on board, like you said, with the like theorists, the advocates that are saying we need something to solve this kind of social problem, right? And like that makes sense. So I feel like through that lens, it's like cool. Like we should have federated services. Like email works great. Mastodon is cool. Like we can have federated chat. It's fine. And I feel like that is kind of what we were going towards originally, and then like Ethereum and stuff kind of all built on was there. The NFT hype kind of got drummed up around it, and it became that in an interesting way, which is kind of a bummer. And I feel like that's what I lament more than anything, probably. But it sounds like we're kind of on the same page. So do you think that will ever be overcomable, and like some of this NFT craze will die down, and we'll kind of get back into the mode of like, oh, let's, develop federated stuff, like WebRTC is cool, we should do peer-to-peer? Or do you think we need a new term and we just need to kill Web3?
We need a new term.
Yeah.
It's already been poisoned. It hasn't even started. It's already been poisoned. I don't know. These people are weird. They're running to the very same financial interests that they're trying to get away from.
Mm-hmm.
And like Twitter former CEO Jack Dorsey is all a big fan of this, and I'm like, coming from you, I don't know why you would like why I don't know why they would be for it. What was it? Patreon wanted to make Web 3.0 blockchain version of Patreon, and like wouldn't that completely invalidate the need for Patreon? You don't have to, you don't need to give them a cut if it's a standard.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Why do people think that this is going to work?
Yeah. I mean, again, there's a lot of people with all kinds of motives and everything in this space. Again, like I feel like it's tricky to analyze the motivation of, like Jack Dorsey and stuff at this point. Like, who knows? There's moral concerns and like all kinds of stuff. We don't have the context on there, but I do feel like those like, oh, we're a big company, we're going to remake our product in a federated way, does just seem very like, but why though? So I think they're trying to ride that hype train more than anything. Kind of, I'm with the consensus here. But I think there is still stuff going on kind of that does matter in the space. And I feel like we should try not to, it's like, oh, it's part of this federated services thing. So it's just, hype and doesn't matter.
I wish we could completely divorce it. Yeah.
For sure.
Like I'm a big fan of blockchain because I like the technology, because like I can't see you having a decentralized service really without blockchain from a technical standpoint. I'm not a big fan of Bitcoin though. Mainly because of the scammers and the association. But like from a technical level, and I wish that we focus more on the technical and not the crazy part.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully it sticks. We'll see. I feel like it's a hard thing to make predictions on, just because like there's so much happening there.
The common refrain that we're missing a killer app, like Mastodon is a thing. It never really caught on.
Yeah. I feel with social media in particular, it's hard because the network effect is more, important there than anywhere else. So it's hard. It's like, well, even a non-federated killer app, like how would you even shift someone at this point?
If I had the answer, I would probably be a millionaire. So.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see. Yeah. I mean, I feel like there is an increasing amount, I feel like, of kind of disdain for the existing players. Maybe that'll keep pushing people a little more, but again, who really knows?
At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if it was just flat out outlawed.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Especially here for the financial concerns. But again, hopefully it doesn't pull down all the rest of the cool stuff that's happening in this space.
Yeah. So to pull back and make our grand predictions for the next year, Web 3.0, what do we resolve there?
I predict that we'll see an increase in I guess I feel there'll probably be a down tick in kind of the fervor around the NFT stuff. I don't see kind of blockchain at large being totally discounted. I feel like we'll still see cool stuff on Ethereum and stuff happening. And hopefully more federated services will kind of slowly continue to grow a little bit. But I don't think we'll have like a big explosion of apps in that space. That's my take.
It's a safe prediction. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I guess I echo what you said. I would also look at IPFS, interplanetary file system. Everything around that, the peer-to-peer web, I hope gets more popular in the next couple of years, because if anything recovers Web3, it will be that area, I think. Besides that, we also mentioned the incredible explosion in non-JavaScript front-end frameworks. I think that will continue. Just people exploring it more, and maybe what it'll happen like with ESBuild, where people don't use ESBuild directly, but they use something else on top of it. I think the Next.js effect, to coin a term.
Yeah. I totally agree. I don't see that hype going anywhere anytime soon for a number of reasons. But like the performance on the development side, and also then performance on like the delivery side, I feel like there's gains to be had on both that are desirable enough that will keep happening for sure.
Yeah, and I'm always looking at the popularity of Rust. I learned Rust this year. Well, beginner level Rust, I guess. But I'm always surprised though how popular Go is increasing in popularity, because I've never really considered it for web stuff, but I guess maybe I should. So maybe that trend will continue.
Yeah, totally.
And moving away from Node, just in general, it seems moving away from like the stalwarts of the last 5 years, I would say. Like React, Redux, Node, nothing is safe anymore.
Yeah. I feel like people are kind of checking out what they want to spend their time working on, more so a little bit than maybe a year ago.
Yeah, and Svelte, like of all the frameworks that I looked up on GitHub Star Growth and npm, Svelte was like to the moon.
Nice.
So safe prediction that will continue.
Yeah, I think the only other big one is probably like browser stuff that we haven't chatted about, and that's a tough one.
Everyone will adopt Firefox. No.
Right. Yeah. I'm skeptical. I kind of hope this downward trend that we've been seeing with Firefox doesn't continue happening. We'll see if they make shifts that kind of re-enable the power users that everyone thinks that they pushed away.
That's sad.
Yeah, but we'll see. I feel like it will kind of be driven by our people getting frustrated with the changes that Chrome is making, and is there enough fear of having one player control 98% of the web space?
I don't know if killing ad blocker is enough for that, because with IE, remember, people switched off from IE. They didn't even have tabs, I don't think, when Chrome gained popularity. Like, they were so far behind. So I think like something has to happen to piss off the everyday user, non-developer user.
Oh yeah, totally. I guess I'm thinking more just like pulling the dev space back, because I feel like that was a lot of Firefox's market share that has since departed, gone to other browsers. So I feel like maybe those kinds of things may push a little bit back, a little bit of the dev audience back, but we'll see. Yeah, no, I totally agree. For popular, like a real migration to the standard user, I feel like there has to be some pretty big faux pas on Chrome's part. But we'll
or maybe all the developers switch to Firefox, and then all of our websites just start breaking in Chrome.
Chrome.
So everyone switches to Firefox. I like that idea.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Make our own predictions come true. Cool.
That's about it. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for our listeners. Thanks to you guys. And we'll see you around.
Thanks for listening to PodRocket. Find us at PodRocketPod on Twitter, or you could always email me, even though that's not a popular option. It's Brian at LogRocket.